Being unbiased is impossible, and if you want to be unbiased, you're basically saying, I don't want to be human, or I'm trying too hard to provide a perspective that is going to inevitably become biased anyways, that is by its nature pretty darn biased. And that's because, well, there's human perspective in everything we do. The words we use, how we deliver it, etc. And even if you deliver it in an unbiased way, you're intentionally doing so, it's going to come off as robotic. And that is what can be seen by anybody with eyes that are natural, to say the least, to see that, well, this person is just doing their job, but they're not really providing perspective of their own. Are they not a human being delivering that message? Can they at least show what they're doing, right? They don't have to have the teleprompter behind the camera. Why can't they just show what they're doing? Like, I'll admit, I have notes right here, just topic points to go over, but that's it. And how often do newscasters show, like, this is what I'm covering, this is what I'm reading off of, right? And this is my opinion on the matter, and this is the knowledge based on why, right? And they say, well, why do you want a journalist to deliver their opinion? What makes them, special to have an opinion? Well, okay, they're a journalist. They've been everywhere. Have they not interviewed people? Have they not experienced events? They could be pretty qualified to have an opinion then, are they not? Now, there's a lot of journalists out there who probably aren't, going to have a great opinion, honestly. But everybody, I mean, we're all just people. Everything is really just an opinion, right? At the end of the day, for that matter. But we all have also some sort of knowledge to share with one another, so why not share that? And are you going to deliver it through some sort of events that has to be telecasted and professionally produced, or are you going to deliver it in a message like this, a video where I'm just talking heart to heart, human to human? But maybe that's the difference itself between the natural world and the unnatural world, is that people do not understand that very little aspect does play a key role in natural relations in general. If you expect your news or your source of knowledge, your information to come from people in suits and ties and look pretty and have a certain design and have a certain way of doing things, I'm sorry, but yeah, that's probably not why you watch my channel, and I'm definitely not meeting those expectations. I just am myself. And wouldn't you expect them to be themselves? Is that a bad thing? I mean, we hear this all the time, right? As a kid, like, be yourself, always be nice to people, but yet, we basically break it on a day-to-day basis, and we know that because, well, for the most part, it's natural. But yes, do we see that there's some level of, like, well, maybe being biased is something that is natural, because every person is to have their own perspective, indeed. And so the lack of perspective is what gives bias, but we can't see every perspective. Do you understand? So when we have somebody putting out a news article trying to be unbiased and trying to just deliver the facts, well, it's more than likely they're covering something of an event somebody's doing for a certain reason, of a certain purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't do anything. Otherwise, there's no point of telling it to the public. We wouldn't cover a story unless we think it's important, right? Otherwise, the media wouldn't get any attention, and also they want to get clicks on their articles, otherwise they wouldn't make any money. This is why people are mad at the journalists and say, well, they should be unbiased because they're doing it for money and for clicks. But then, if it's working for clicks and if it's working for money, then clearly people are liking their bias. People are liking their religions, their certain ways of thinking. So do you see the trend here? People just want other natural human beings, even if it's, again, information that isn't, great, is misleading them, etc. Even if that's the case, they want to see information being delivered in a human format. And people are getting sick of the mainstream media. They're getting sick of these mainstream institutions, mainstream movies, because of how PC it is, how agenda-oriented it's become, how to where people are just not being human anymore, they're being robots, and people can sense that. People have that natural feeling, at least it's there for some people, I would hope. It's in myself, and I don't know if I'm the only person when I say that, but I look at it immediately. That's the first thing I think. It's like, gosh, look at how much makeup this person is wearing. But yes, being biased is natural. Everyone has a position of their own. Why not share it? Embrace your honesty, embrace your authenticity is not what part of being a human being is. Encourage then open debate, you know? Why not? Instead of saying this is what it is and this is what's happening and yes, we're unbiased and we're the most trustworthy and we're the best. It's like, and let's look super fancy and give the illusion like we're professional and know what we're talking about when we're literally just reading a script. How about instead you encourage open dialogue and just be human and real about things? I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference, because if you're losing your humanity in a world that is losing their humanity, a world that's losing their conscience, their empathy, their care for things that's going on, the world is going crazy and chaotic because people are confused and in ignorance, well, maybe it would help not to give them knowledge through the unbiased perspective, but through the biased perspective. The one that you see, just as I said, is people being in ignorance and people being in confusion. Maybe there's a point to where you have to be like Mark Pastio and scream at the camera and say, you people need to do something, get off your butts and actually start producing content yourself, stop watching the news and start being the news, right? Start making history. And where's the ability to be flexible, right? To say, oh, maybe I was wrong on the story, I'm sorry, you know, I'll correct it, I'll take it away, you know, I'm going to try my best to be accurate when it comes to the truth, but I'm also not just going to talk about this one thing or that one thing. I'm going to be able to talk about whatever, and if people think it's problematic, I'm going to address it. I'm going to talk with them. I'm not just going to go behind their backs. I'm not going to do research or attack them or censor them, what have you. I'm not going to tweet about them on Twitter and go some long, you know, Twitter rant. I'm going to address it. And how many news anchors are going to do that? Again, they've become dehumanized to the extent that they've dehumanized themselves just as much as the average public who consumes their content. And maybe I'm speaking to the choir because people who watch my videos don't watch the news that often, but it's likely you still watch some like independent news or somebody who's trying to be unbiased and tell things truthfully. I'll tell you this, there's a reason why the independent media is less unbiased and why the mainstream media attacks them all the time for their bias. Because the independent media is attacking ideas that the mainstream media doesn't want people looking at. So the mainstream media really doesn't like the independent media, otherwise the independent media would not exist. It exists for the very reason that it's an alternative to the mainstream. It's an alternative to the unbiased establishment, and now to the unbiased truth. So there's a difference. It's like saying natural bias and unnatural bias, etc., right? So there's a time and place for everything. We can understand where the bias is actually good and where it's not. But like I'm saying, there needs to be a human input into it. So all these news companies saying, we're just going to deliver the facts, that's not what's going to change the world. What's going to change the world is education of morality. That's not news, that's philosophy. And why don't they teach it in schools? Because again, it's unimportant to educate the world, even though that's what the news is claiming to do, right? We're providing people with news. So what is the news for? Oh, well, it's for education. Well, what education if it's not teaching anybody anything new? It's just telling them temporary events or things that are happening, and often it's just the same repeated stories, like this person did this bad thing. Oh, this event is happening on this day, and it's not talking about anything important. It's just another temporary thing. It's another thing based on another religion, based on another man-made phenomenon. But it isn't actually talking about, well, are we enslaved as a human species? Are we free? What is freedom? What is rights? It doesn't define those things. And you say, oh, well, that's what the school's job is. And then you look at the schools and you look at the textbooks, and it's like, okay, this is what happened back in history. We're trying to be unbiased again. Oh, and this is mathematics. This is the unbiased mathematics. 2 + 2 = 4. Accept it. Stay in line at all times and do not question authority. Make sure to raise your hand. Do you see the problem here? I'm saying that this sort of order following is going alongside this unbiased narrative. Because human beings are to express themselves, and when they might be wrong, if they might be wrong, they have to be open to that. They have to practice that. They have to be willing to change. They cannot just have strict positions like, this is what I am, and if you don't like it, I'm going away, and I'm going to build my whole foundation on this so I can't change my mind afterwards. You're not making it able to be flexible. You have to be able to be flexible. If you have a business and you want that business to succeed, you have to be flexible, because if you don't have a product that people don't like, you can't just be like, okay, let's keep going with that product. Let's keep pushing it. Eventually people will like it. It might work if you're Coca-Cola or some big company that makes a bunch of money and can also manipulate people's taste buds. But otherwise, no. You need to have a pretty darn good product. Even then, Coca-Cola is just a sugar high, so it's a good product. Doesn't mean it's actually healthy for people. So it's better than being a robot to be human, okay? And with a set script and trying to not be biased, it's better to just be human. And is that not more simple? You say, well, it's nice if I have somebody write me my script. Okay, well then you're not yourself either. I mean, that's even worse, right? And then you have to dress up and to do all this stuff. I mean, do you realize how many layers now you're building on top of this narrative, and everybody is always exposed to it all the time, and people are to take your word as truth, and you're not allowed to have an opinion about it? No way. And you say, well, I can have my opinion on my own aside from the news. Well, it's like, okay, you're delivering the news, but you want to have your opinion on the side. But if you know it to be truthful, or you know it might be actually empowering, then why isn't it that you just deliver that at all times? Why do you have to suppress the truth ever? So what about the news? I mean, like I said, it's not natural facts. And what I mean by natural facts, there's a section in my book, Sapientia Naturae. Natural facts is talking about things that are natural, right? Such as the human body, universal truths, eternal truths, timeless. But if you're talking about, like I said, events or people or places, these are not always timeless and universal. So they're not so essential to society. It's not what's going to move us on into our evolution, as I said in my previous video with evolution and our destiny. So if you want to increase that destiny, if you want people to have similar ideals to you better start expressing it yourself. And there's no problem with doing that, as long as you have knowledge, as long as you're open-minded, as long as you're flexible, as long as you're not imposing it, as long as you're not creating a narrative built around it, right? You are just expressing your ideas like everybody else, and I think people will like you. They'll see you as more trustworthy, and they might actually form more of a base around you. Like, look at the common celebrities around the world who people tend to like the most. They're the ones that are outspoken but are relatable to the average public, or gets in contact with them often, or just generally has a good relationship with their audience, can understand them, right? Elon Musk is somebody, for example, that people are like, hey, I'm okay with him taking over Twitter, even though, he might be a billionaire and might have different connections, and maybe it's really good to have as a frontman, but either way, he can get along with the generation. He's done it. And there's no reason why anybody else can't get along with the generation, understand the current pace, current environments, to then create a good product or create whatever must be created for the world. That is a matter of harmonizing with it and understanding it and going with it. The old dinosaur media is that of which follows scripts and just does what they're told. And the new media is actually being real media, going on the scene, talking about it, sharing with people, encouraging they do their own research. Is that not better education? People teaching themselves? I think it's probably the best form. Thank you very much for watching. Provide the resources. Help other people be their own teachers, their own educators. Help other people be their own media. I mean, we can have the biggest media organization in the world if we did that. And it's possible. People are starting their own independent media for a reason. Don't ignore it. Listen to it. Join it. Be a part of this great change, this great awakening in humanity. And I encourage anybody, if they want to collaborate with me, please go ahead. I'm totally biased, and I'm proud of it. Because I know where I stand, I know I'm a human being, and I'm prone to bias. It's just how we are. And so I embrace it, but I still try to find the truth, and the truth doesn't care about my feelings. Is that biased, or is that the truth? Well, perhaps we should look at the truth more than anything. Thank you.